What's up, people? Welcome back to Chris Chats Comics. My name is Chris Gonzalez, and I'm back again for another episode of Trade Talk Tuesdays. And for this week's episode, in celebration of Star Wars Month, going over Star Wars: The Legacy of Vader, Volume 2. So let's get into it. So Trade Talk Tuesdays is the video series where I highlight and discuss, recap, review either one or a couple of collected editions that have either recently released or that are in my collection. And so, yeah, like I mentioned, if you want to check out the last episode of Trade Talk Tuesdays where I discuss The Legacy of Vader Volume 1, you can definitely do so. I'll leave a link in the end of the video so you can check it out. So yeah, this week we're going over Legacy of Vader Volume 2, and like always, I'm going to read the back excerpt on the back of the book. So, Darth Vader still casts a long shadow over the galaxy. So on a distant snow-covered planet, Kylo Ren has met his match against former Jedi Grandea, the survivor of Order 66. Flashbacks to the Clone Wars era reveal Grandea's daring use of the Force in the face of ultimate betrayal. But will a living testament to the worst tragedy to ever befall the Jedi be able to change Kylo's evil ways? And the Knights of Ren return with a new leader, Tava Ren. But to assert her control, Tava must kill Kylo Ren. A quest of discovery sends Kylo deep into the unseen caverns below Darth Vader's castle, where his sanity will be tested to its limits, and the legacy of Vader comes full circle. So, yeah, this is written by Charles Soule. Again, the artwork is once again done by Luke Ross and Stefano Raphael. Let's see. So Luke Ross does issues 7 and 10 through 12, and Stefano Raphael does issues 8 and 9. The colorist is Nolan Woodard, and the letterer is Joe Caramagna. And this trade paperback collects Star Wars: The Legacy of Vader, issues 7 through 12. So, again, Charles Soule, I'm a big fan of his writing, and just like the first volume, I really dug the second volume. And I might have dug the second volume a little bit more than the first volume, and I really enjoyed the first volume. So let's go ahead and get started. So issue 7, again, issue 6 ended where Kyle Vinay, Darth Vader's former servant, who, has turned himself into a cyborg, and he has stayed at Vader's castle on Mustafar and now is trying to serve Kylo Ren. And he has led Kylo to this planet called Lati in the Mid-Rim, and he has sent him on a journey to kill a Jedi. So this issue 7 picks off right where issue 6 ended, and Kylo is confronting this former Jedi who survived Order 66, and they go outside, and because we don't know how long she's been on this planet, but she wants to take things outside so Kylo doesn't hurt her friends, and they get into just a discussion about how she once was a Jedi but is no longer. And she pretty much gives Kylo a history lesson on the Clone Wars and Order 66, so I thought that was pretty compelling. And to escape Order 66, she used the Jedi mind trick to confuse these clone troopers and to evade them. And I liked how it referenced Obi-Wan's message from Revenge of the Sith when him and Yoda go to the Jedi Temple, and he sends a message out to all the surviving Jedi to not return to the temple on Coruscant. So that is referenced here, and due to that message, Grandea, she stops being a Jedi. She burns her robes, she destroys her lightsaber, and she just tries to survive as long as she can. And you know, she will always be hunted, because again, she's on the list of potential surviving Jedi that the Empire has. So in order to escape and evade the Empire, she masters the power of the Jedi mind trick, and that's how in these panels it highlights how she used the Jedi mind trick, and she even tested her power by using the Jedi mind trick on what's the species called, Tadorians and the Hutts. So because they're not as easily susceptible to the Jedi mind trick, so she actually got so strong in using the Jedi mind trick, she actually used it on the Tadorians, and she thought she was out of the clear. But one day Vader and his Inquisitors show up, and the Inquisitors are on the hunt, and so they're hunting her. It's the 9th sister and the 13th sister, and you might recognize the 9th sister from the Fallen Order games, or the Jedi Fallen Order games, and also she was introduced in Charles Soule's Darth Vader run. So she's on the run from these 2 Inquisitors, and again, she's so strong with the Jedi mind trick that she convinces the Inquisitors that she's dead, that they killed her. So I thought this was really compelling and a really cool use of the Jedi mind trick, and that's how, because Inquisitors, they're no slouches. They're strong in the Force, so to use the Jedi mind trick to trick them was really cool to see. So yeah, and then the Inquisitors tell Vader, like, yeah, she's dead. Vader's like, where's the body? And they tell her, like, oh, it burned up. So I just thought that was, again, really cool, and we haven't really seen the Jedi mind trick used like that, so I really appreciated that. And Grant Dea is the actual one who first tells Kylo that Luke Skywalker is dead, because after episode 8, Kylo, because Luke used the Force projection power, and that used so much of his energy that he died from it, and somehow Kylo couldn't sense it, and Grant Dea, she actually calls that out in this issue and asks him, like, oh, you couldn't sense it? So Grant Dea tries to get inside the mind of Kylo, and he gets his lightsaber back and cuts her down. This part kind of confused me, because I was like, okay, is she dead? Like, what? So I think she really did die, but then she's floats up and just taunts him with knowledge that Luke, this is where she asked him, like, oh, I wonder why you didn't sense Luke after he passed. But it's pretty much where, and she just, Kylo tries to swipe at her again, but she disappears. So really great issue, and Kylo, he's just angry. So, and then we move on to the Tava Ren 2-parter. So this new Knights of Ren, she's introduced. Her name is Tava Ren. She has taken over the group, and we find out that the Knights of Ren were betrayed by Kylo, and we didn't know that. So I thought that was interesting. So they're at this temple. They're trying to get into this vault to steal some artifacts, but Tava, she fights off these monks, but there's too many of them, and the Knights of Ren, they betray Tava. They ditch her, and she narrowly escapes the monks. And I like how she's explaining to these monks, what the Knights of Ren believe in. Like, they believe in the shadow and the power it gives them, and they believe in the Ren, which is a lightsaber, and the freedom it reveals. So it calls back to the 4-issue miniseries that Charles Soule also wrote, The Rise of Kylo Ren, where that's where we first got introduced into the Knights of Ren, or more of their backstory, I should say, and how Ben Solo turned into Kylo Ren. So I thought that was a cool callback. And so as the other knights, they're back on their ship, the Night Buzzard, which I really think is a cool design. And they're explaining like, oh, we have a lot of explaining to do if Tava comes back, because we essentially ditched her. So she comes back, and they tell Tava like, hey, you gave us bad intel, we weren't supposed to meet resistance, and you know, trying to steal these things. And then they get into talking about Kylo. Again, once again calls back to the Rise of Kylo Ren miniseries, where he defeats Ren and becomes the new masters of the Knights of Ren. And the other knights just explain that, yeah, things were good for a while with Kylo, but then he started to, you know, separate himself from them, and he, you know, would essentially be alone. And they go to, it jumps to this scene where they're in the rain, they're hunting down this one warlord on the Inner Rim, and this actually calls back to the vision that Rey had when she touched Luke's and Anakin's lightsaber in The Force Awakens, because she saw a vision of Kylo and the rest of the Knights of Ren in the rain. This is from this, so I thought that was pretty cool. You can see this is exactly how it happened in The Force Awakens. So it's revealed in, because the Knights of Ren, they had dealings with Snoke before, but this is the first time where they dealt with Snoke as he is, you know, the supreme leader of the First Order. So it's essentially Snoke who, you know, Kylo sides with, and Snoke essentially tells Kylo like, hey, ditch these guys, they're beneath you. So that's how Kylo betrays the other knights, and Snoke tells the stormtroopers to, you know, kill them. And so they run, and so that's why the Knights of Ren aren't in The Force Awakens, pretty much. And then Tava, eventually she says like, hey, I gotta go kill Kylo. So she goes by herself in the Night Buzzard to the flagship, the Finalizer, and Kylo, you know, recognizes the ship, and he's like, okay, let them land. And then Tava introduces herself as Tava Ren, and she takes off her helmet, and she has the same symbol that was on Ren's helmet. She has it on her neck. So what does that symbol mean? Let me know in the comments what that means. But she goes to Kylo, she's like, I want to serve you. So what are her intentions? So that's issue 8 ends there. And then issue 9, Kylo questions Tava like, yo, how can you serve me? You're a knight. And then Kylo, he immediately tries to kill her. So they have a pretty exhilarating fight. And so I thought that was a pretty cool sequence. The artwork was pretty good by Stefano Raphael, and the stormtroopers try to get involved, but Kylo's like, no, this is all me. And then Tava, she's like, oh, what does she say? This is more fun than you had in ages. And then Kylo, he thinks back to when he teamed up with Rey in the throne room in episode 8. So they continue to fight. Kylo gets the best of her. And then takes her lightsaber. And then I thought this was a pretty humorous moment. Kylo doesn't kill her, but she asks him, hey, what do we got to eat on this monstrosity of a ship? So they have dinner, and then they get to know each other a little bit more, and then Kylo's like, yo, how can you serve me? Like, and then he asks her like, oh, how did you get control of the other Knights of Ren? Those fools, they're worthless. And then Tava's like, well, you treated them like dirt, I treated them pretty well. And she goes over how she got met up with the Knights of Ren. So they worked with this gang leader named Badots, this guy right here, this guy. And so the Knights, they were working as enforcers for him, and then she was working as an assassin. But she also revealed that she was also force sensitive, and she, used the dark side, and that's how she recognized the Knights. And since they have a rule where in order to join the Knights, you have to commit a good kill. So she murders Badots and all of his soldiers, and that's essentially how she became the new leader of the Knights. And then, yeah, this is where Kylo's like, okay, you came here alone, how can you serve me? And Tava's like, oh, I wasn't going to serve you, I was actually trying to kill you. And then and they just get into a discussion of what, she's trying to get into Kylo's head. She tries to seduce him and eventually kisses him. After this, Kylo's like shaken up. He doesn't know what to think. And, because he's in love with Rey, but immediately he's like, orders his troopers to shoot her on sight and that she's an intruder. And so Kylo's, Tava, she's like, whatever, I'm gonna take my shit back and then escape. And that's what she does. She goes through some of these stormtroopers. I thought this was pretty fun. And she uses the Force. She taps into the shadow or the dark side to move her ship and hit the rest of the stormtroopers, and she escapes. And then General Hux, he tells Kylo like, hey, we gotta lock on the ship. What are your orders? Do you want to destroy her? And Kylo lets her escape. So maybe he does like her a little bit. So he lets her escape. And then that's the end of Tava. We don't see her again, which I was pretty surprised, but she might show up later, and I'll mention that when we get to it. So next issue, issue 10, we're back on Mustafar, and back in the first volume, Vinay had promised Kylo that he would show him Vader's vaults, for within it lies great hidden power. And again, this is after episode 8, and again, Luke has died, and this is after the battle they had on Crate. Kylo tells Vinay like, hey, I can still sense Luke. I can still sense his presence. I want to, get rid of it permanently. And he brings up to Vinay like, hey, you mentioned this vault holds power. Where is it? And then Vinay shows him, and then I thought this was a pretty cool spread page of Kylo going through, entering the vault. But he comes back to where he started, and he's like, what is this, Vinay? You're tripping. Vinay's like, I've never been inside. The vault decides who gets to go in it. And so, but he offers Kylo an alternative, and he tells him, hey, use Vader's old meditation chamber, and then maybe it will show you what you seek in trying to destroy Luke's presence. So we then jump to a creepy scene of, this might be Dagobah, but we don't know, but get this monstrous creature with, you know, the faces of all those who are close to Kylo at one point, including his parents, Snoke, Vader, Luke, I think, Lando, Chewie. So I thought this was a really creepy scene. So he cuts them down. So it's kind of like his version of the Dagobah cave. And I thought this was cool that in one hand he has the red lightsaber, and the other hand he has the blue lightsaber. So he still has a connection to the light side of the Force. And, you know, throughout the sequel trilogy, he's, you know, fighting the light side. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to visualize that. And then eventually, you know, he cuts all those monsters down, and he's trying to find Luke's presence. He's trying to connect. So it goes through, you know, Luke and his past as, you know, when Ben was a Jedi in Luke's school. And again, this calls back to the rise of Kylo Ren as well. And then he gets transported to this. I'm not sure where he gets transported to, but apparently he's not supposed to be there because he has the dark side within him, and only the people pure in the light side can appear in this area. But he finds Luke's spirit or his Force ghost. It's not really clarified, but he has a conversation with him. He's like, he's pretty much, I'm trying to destroy you, stop trying to teach me. And Luke still, you know, is being reasonable with him. And I just thought this scene was pretty good. And Luke Ross's artwork is just incredible. It just perfectly captures Adam Driver's and Mark Hamill's facial features. So I thought this, again, artwork is really good. And then Kylo's like, hey, why did you choose her? Why did you choose Rey? And he was like, she wanted to learn. And Kylo, he's like, stop messing with me. Because it calls back to what Luke said at the end of episode 8, where he tells Kylo, like, oh, I'll see you later, kid. And then never really gets brought up again in episode 9, but I digress. So Luke's like, yeah, well, yeah, our time is done, but like, Kylo Ren means nothing to me, but Ben, on the other hand, he'll always be there for Ben. So again, just alluding to the fact that Kylo still has connection to the light side deep down. And then, so I don't know. So within that vision, I guess he gets chopped. Like, he gets mortally wounded. So Vinay takes him, and Vinay has his own his own ulterior motives for Kylo. So that's where Vinay puts him into a bacta tank to heal him. And that's where issue 10 ends. And then in issue 11, again, Kylo is still healing from his wounds from the meditation chamber. And then Vinay wants to further Kylo in his ascension into the dark side, you know, to become the next Vader. So Vinay puts he puts Vader's helmet on Kylo. Kylo's freaking out. And essentially Vinay wants to set Kylo Ren on fire because he thinks that will, you know, help him further ascend into the dark side. And then Kylo, he, you know, eventually escapes. And now he's on the hunt. He's finally going to try to kill Vinay, because he's been trying this whole series to kill him, and Vinay sets up a bunch of traps for Kylo. Thought this was pretty cool. And then eventually Kylo gets into this room, and Vinay has activated a bunch of dark troopers to fight Kylo. They injure him a little bit, but Kylo, gets the best of him, because of course Kylo's pretty strong. And Kylo, he grabs a lightsaber, an old Jedi lightsaber that was in the castle, and it had a green kyber crystal. So he uses that lightsaber to destroy the dark troopers. And I thought this was pretty cool. He makes the crystal bleed and it turns red, and he cracks it, to mimic his own lightsaber with the crackling. I thought this was pretty cool. And then he finally gets a hold of Vinay. But before he kills him, he asks Vinay, like, hey, was Vader's vault another lie, or what's really in there? And Vinay is like, I don't know, I've never been in there. Vader never let me see what was inside. And Kylo's like, your greatest sin, Vinay, was wasting my time. And I thought this was pretty cool. So essentially Vinay gets his wish, and Vinay's happy because he pretty much wanted this. He's like, oh, if Lord Vader couldn't kill me, having someone in his bloodline kill me is the next best thing. So Vinay finally dies, and after that, Kylo decides to enter Vader's vault one more time to obtain the true power hidden within. And then the last issue, issue 12, is essentially, again, Kylo's version of the Dagobah cave, and it's really trippy. And he finds Vader. He tries to have Vader help him, and it's like a fever dream as well. And they're on top of a giant Vader. Great artwork again. And then they get into a fight, Vader and Kylo. And throughout, it's like he's like, is this all we are, fighting each other generation after generation? And Vader's like, forever. Kylo then asks, why? What is this curse? And Vader's like, not a curse. There's no destiny. There's only power in how we choose to use it. Your grandfather's greatest power was truth. And so it's revealed, just like in the Dagobah cave in Empire, where Luke, he's fighting Vader, but after Luke gets the best of him, cuts a hole in the helmet, it's revealed that Luke was fighting himself. And that's essentially what happens here. Kylo is fighting the light side of himself, Ben Solo. So it's just a visual representation of the internal struggle that Kylo has, fighting off the light side when he, wants to embrace the dark side. So I thought this was cool. I thought that was cool. The ending was, again, really trippy. Again, he's just fighting himself. And we get a flashback to, or seek a page where it shows Han and Leia with baby Ben, and I thought that was pretty heartfelt. And yeah, so Kylo, he just wants to kill the past, but the past is what defines him, and that's what he's fighting, and that's, I guess, what this vision is trying to tell him. And I just thought, again, very weird way to end. Because again, you see his light side disappear. And that's where it ends, and then it says, "The reign ends, the fall begins. Kylo Ren will return." So it was just announced that Charles Soule is returning to do a 5-issue miniseries called The Fall of Kylo Ren. So that will like conclude his trilogy of Kylo Ren series. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, that was it. This was The Legacy of Vader Volume 2. So I really enjoyed the series. The pacing was really fast. It was a fast read, very fun. And if you enjoyed the character of Kylo Ren, I definitely recommend reading this. And yeah, it was just really good writing, more insight into his internal struggle, and we got some great scenes, or great, sequences with the Knights of Ren. We'll see how Tava Ren, how she comes back, because again, she didn't die. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the new series. So definitely recommend Star Wars: The Legacy of Vader Volume 2, and then, like I mentioned, check out my video on Volume 1 and get that volume, and you'll have the whole series. So that was it. So on the next episode of Trade Talk Tuesdays, I'm going to be going over Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is Volume 1, and this is Volume 1 of Jason Aaron's short run, but pretty acclaimed run. So this is the next book I'm going to go over, so be on the lookout for that. And yeah, that was it. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Leave a like on the video, share it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I'm sure my goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers. And yeah, thank you again for watching. And my name is Chris Gonzalez. This is Chris Chats Comics, and I'm out. Peace.